Can a woman be a jinx? If you put that question to Chicago gangland back when Tommy guns roared and bathtubs smelled of gin, the answer would have been an unequivocal yes. Looking furtively about, the answerer would then whisper the name, Margaret Mary Collins, aka, the Kiss of Death Girl. How did Ms. Collins manage to get labeled with such a gruesome sobriquet? Margaret Mary was a woman of the underworld, and over the course of about 10 years, depending on the source, anywhere from 5 to 10 of her hoodlum lovers went from romancing her to pushing up daisies. Odds are that she may only have had a passing acquaintance with some of those who perished, but we can't let facts get in the way of good gangster lore. One writer stated that Margaret Mary originally hailed from New York City and moved to Chicago's North Side in the early 20s following the untimely death of her hoodlum boyfriend, but we will stick with the original Chicago 7 and some maybes. The first victim of the Kiss of Death Girl's hex was gunman John Sheehy. Sheehy was a Confederate of North Side gang boss Dean O'Banion and had a long list of arrests but managed to avoid prison. A little after midnight on December 7, 1923, Sheehy, Margaret Mary and her friend Annie Jest entered a popular cabaret called the Club Rendezvous. Nearly 500 revelers were on hand, so the servers were quite busy. At one point she ordered a bowl of ice and grew impatient waiting for it. After a time, he approached the head waiter, Henry Bing, and demanded the ice. Bing assured him that if he would return to his seat, the waiter would bring it to him. "I want that ice, right now, and I'm going to get it," the thug growled. Bing responded with something she didn't care for, and the gunman decked him in the jaw. With that, Bing went outside to find a cop. Back inside, bartender Leo Guth, who saw the incident, grabbed a bottle to use as a weapon and approached Sheehy. The hoodlum quickly drew his pistol and fired a bullet through the bartender's head. Bing found a cop who went inside and was caught off guard by the armed hoodlum who snarled, "Beat it, and damned quick or I will kill you." The cop ran out and met a brother officer, and the two discussed their next move. Meanwhile, Bing, who was unaware that his bartender had been killed, re-entered the club and was immediately shot and fell, mortally wounded. A shootout with the officers ensued, and despite wounding one of them, she was hit twice and died later at the hospital. Margaret Mary and her friend were arrested but released. Miss Collins, we're told, then took up with another hoodlum named John Phillips. Like his predecessor, he was involved with the North Side gangsters. Also, like her former beau, Margaret Mary's second flame would be extinguished in a nightclub fracas. The wee hours of August 27, 1924 found Phillips out with the boys. There were 5 in the party, which is believed to have included North Side gunman Louis II Gun Altieri and Frank Gusenberg. Around 2 a.m., Phillips became belligerent with one of the female entertainers and slapped her. The police were called and a paddy wagon was sent out. 3 cops went inside to confront the rowdies while one stayed with the wagon. When they approached the table, the hoodlums drew their guns and ordered the cops to throw up their hands. 2 complied while the third retreated outside to prepare for battle. When the gunman exited with the officers, Phillips, a gun in each hand, caught 3 bullets in the head. His Confederates escaped on foot. Margaret Mary was again single. Not long after the death of Phillips, Margaret Mary moved into the Congress Hotel, which also happened to be the place where Louis Altieri hung his hat. Though married, it was speculated that he and Collins had a brief affair. This was supposedly followed by a quick dalliance with another North Side gangster named Vincent the Schemer Drucci. Speculations aside, her official next steady was an underworld character named David Giroux, called Jew Bates. He too was a pal of Dean O'Banion's. It was said that while dating Giroux, Margaret Mary started up a relationship with O'Banion. The story was told that during a night out in the latter half of 1924, O'Banion, Altieri, Giroux and Margaret Mary were dining with another Chicago gangster named Mike Corazzo and his wife. The latter said something to offend Margaret Mary, who reached across the table and slapped her. Corazzo responded by punching Margaret. Giroux, O'Banion and Altieri proceeded to beat Corazzo to a pulp. A short time later, on November 10, 1924, O'Banion was gunned down in his flower shop by rival gunmen. He would be considered victim number 3 as talk of a curse started to grow. Some wondered if the fight with Carrazzo wasn't behind the Abanian murder. The relationship with Giroux began to fizzle, and Margaret Mary is next linked with a young ambitious jewel thief and bootlegger named Irving Schlig. Nicknamed Sonny, Schlig bought an airplane and paid a pilot to teach him to fly. After a mere 2 hours training, Schlig flew to Canada for a cargo of booze. Unfortunately for the neophyte pilot, on the return trip engine trouble forced him down in a Kalamazoo, Michigan cornfield. He destroyed his cargo lest he be caught with the goods. On August 27, 1925, Schlig and an associate named Harry Berman took off for the airfield for a return trip to Canada. They never made it. Both were found shot to death the following morning. Margaret Mary was picked up for questioning, and by this time her ghastly reputation was spreading through gangland. Arrested for the double murder was another young gangster named Eugene "Red" McLaughlin, who, when told that the Jinx girl was going to testify against him, stated, "If you drag that broad in, you'll never hang me. All her friends get the bump before they get the rope." McLaughlin was an associate of Schlig's, and it is believed that he killed the latter and Berman over the spoils of a gem theft. Another story has it that McLaughlin and Collins were actually an item and that Margaret Mary was having an affair with Schlig. Either way, whether before or after the Schlig murder, it is accepted that Red McLaughlin was involved with the Kiss of Death girl. After the flying bootlegger's murder, however, the curse went dormant for the remainder of the 20s. That is, if you don't count the death of North Side gangster Vincent the Schemer Drucci, who was shot to death while in police custody on April 4, 1927. The curse came roaring back in 1930. January 7 saw the demise of ex-boyfriend David Giroux, who was killed in Covington, Kentucky. Things got hot for Giroux in Chicago, and the hoodlum moved to Cincinnati, Ohio to ply his underworld trade. After a while, authorities there tired of him and forced him to leave town. He headed for the seemingly greener pastures of Covington. On January 5, Giroux was mortally wounded while attempting to either kidnap or take another underworld character for a ride. 6 months later, Red McLaughlin fell victim to the hex. The hoodlum returned from a trip to Miami on May 16. Less than a week later he disappeared. On June 7, his body rose to the surface of a drainage canal after being churned up by a passing tugboat. 2 bullets had been sent through the back of his head. His hands were tied behind him and 70 pounds of iron had been attached to his body to keep him down. On June 3, while McLaughlin was lying at the bottom of the canal waiting for the tugboat that would eventually float him topside, one of Margaret Mary's more recent lovers took his turn with the curse. His name was Thomas Somnerio, and he was said to be an associate of Capone gunman Machine Gun Jack McGurn. He had been arrested for taking part in the murder of a local politician in 1928. The facts and extent of his relationship with Collins is unknown. He was found in a Cicero alley, hands bound behind him, garroted with a stretch of wire. The next casualty of the Jinx was gunman Sam Katz. His specialty was kidnapping gamblers and holding them for ransom. Katz fulfilled his duties on June 16, 1932. He and 2 Confederates informed a gambler that if he didn't cough up 25 grand it would be just too bad. The gambler agreed, and they were told to stop at his place at 4 p.m. on the 16th. Unbeknownst to Katz and his Confederates, the gambler had gone to the authorities, and a contingent of lawmen set a trap for the hoodlums. When they arrived, a gunfight broke out and Katz and his accomplices were cut down by shotguns and pistols. Margaret Mary didn't take off much time to mourn Katz. Within months she found herself in the arms of another bandit, Solomon Fellman. Known as Bulldog, Fellman has the distinction of being the man who beat the curse. However, the curse did not go gently into the goodnight. On November 31, 1932, Fellman was shot by a cop while trying to escape after stealing a fur coat from a store. Though seriously wounded, Fellman laughed off the curse while in the hospital. He eventually rebounded and was released. He and Margaret Mary stayed together for quite a while before splitting up. It appeared to all that the curse had finally died. Or did it? On October 9, 1933, Chicago racketeer Gus Winkler was gunned down, and one writer tells us that as the undertaker was preparing him for his funeral, Margaret Mary called up in tears saying that she was coming right over to kiss him goodbye. Supposedly she showed up and made a scene before leaving when Gus's widow showed up. On October 25, 1935, it appeared that the curse may have returned when Bulldog Feldman checked himself into the hospital with a bullet wound in his neck. Once again he recovered. That year also saw the demise of Margaret Mary's possible one-time fling Louis II gun Altieri, who was mowed down by shotgun and rifle fire on the evening of July 18 while exiting his apartment building. As for the kiss of death girl herself, Margaret Mary was arrested a few times throughout the 30s and 40s. In 1933, Chicago passed a law where anyone with a criminal reputation could be picked up, charged with vagrancy and forced to leave town. Margaret was the first woman to be arrested under the law. As if by design, she was picked up on Friday the 13th. When the judge asked if that worried her, she assured him that she was not superstitious. As the 40s dawned, Margaret was arrested in a drug raid but exonerated. There was talk of a revived curse when she and an accomplice, Anna Williams, were apprehended after a shoplifting spree in Gary, Indiana, and placed in prison. Williams complained of terrible pain and was sent to the hospital where she died of a gastric ulcer. Apparently, the public felt this death was just one of those things, as Margaret Mary Collins was able to slip into obscurity. With all future men she was associated with, no doubt grateful to Bulldog Feldman for breaking the curse of the kiss of death girl. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and consider subscribing. If you would like to support the channel, there is a PayPal link in the description.